Reading with your kids.
Hola, ni hao, konnichiwa, assalamu alaikum, shalom, mahaba, ciao, bonjour, namaste, jumbo, bienvenidos. Hey, my name is Jadley. Welcome to Reading with Your Kids. We are coming to you from the beautiful, wonderful, sunny neighborhood of Reedville, located in the southwest corner of Boston, Massachusetts. We're so very honored and absolutely delighted that you're joining us in our mission to help all families grow closer through reading. We do that by sharing fun, thoughtful, and thought-provoking conversations with fascinating people who just happen to be writing books for kids of all ages. You can join us in our mission by telling all of your family and friends about the show and letting them know that they can hear us on the WREB AM FM 24/7 radio network. And they can find us on the iHeartRadio app, on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Good Pods, Amazon Music, Podcast Addict, CastBox, Player FM, Audible. Wherever you find your favorite shows, you can find Reading with Your Kids. We have a wonderful show lined up for you today. First up, Jasminne Paulino is here to celebrate her middle grade novel. It's called The Extraordinary Orbit of Alex Ramirez. And later in the show, Katherine Davis Gibbon will be here to celebrate her picture book. It's called Words. Imagine a time before time, when light first touched the world and the animals roamed wild and free. The Day Time Began is a breathtaking picture book that retells the biblical story of creation with vibrant rhyme and rich full-page illustrations. Perfect for ages 2 to 8. This keepsake book features over 160 realistic animals and an online animal ID guide so kids can learn as they explore. With bonus classroom resources and an acted-out story motions online, this book is a gift that brings the beauty of God's creation to life. Give your child a story that stirs up hope in a good and gracious God. The Day Time Began. Available now at thedaytimebegan.com.
Have you outgrown your health insurance plan or just not happy with what you're paying for? The number one reason we all change our health insurance is price. Are you paying too much for your health insurance? Would you like to have better coverage at a better rate or at little or no cost to you? Your life needs are always changing, but have you done anything to improve your health insurance for you and your family? Health insurance laws and coverage are always changing and getting better. It's impossible to do all the research yourself, but now it's all done for you for free. So regardless of your age or medical condition, take a few minutes right now and find out if you can save money or even qualify for zero-cost health insurance in your state. Call now.
Paid for by Cheaper Health Insurance. 800-932-1656. 800-932-1656. 800-932-1656. That's 800-932-1656.
Before we invite our guests into the studio, I would love to invite you to visit a very special website. It's clownswithoutborders.org. Clownswithoutborders.org. This is a group that I absolutely adore. I am part of Clowns Without Borders, and I had the honor of being part of the 2023 tour of El Salvador. I had so much fun joining with artists from all over the world to bring a smile to people who really needed it and really appreciated it too. And we would love for you to join us as a monthly Joy Maker. The Joy Makers, they're a family of people just like you who love to laugh and make other people feel good. So please take a moment and visit clownswithoutborders.org and consider joining me as a Joy Maker. Join us right now from right outside of New York City. Our guest is here today to celebrate her new middle grade novel. Is called The Extraordinary Orbit of Alex Ramirez. Please welcome to the show, Jasminne Paulino. Jasminne, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm delighted to have you on. Boy, I love talking about space travel and adventures.
That's exciting. And then I'm sure Alex is the kid for you then.
Yeah. So tell us all about the book.
It's a middle grade novel in verse, and it's about a seventh grader who is neurodivergent, and he's in a self-contained classroom, but he dreams about being an astronaut and is frustrated by the fact that his classroom keeps him in one room all day long, and he really wants to join the mainstream seventh grade science class, which he believes will get him closer to his astronaut dreams.
Boy, this is a subject near and dear to my heart. Probably before you were born, and certainly before it was cool, and it's before the Americans with Disabilities Act was passed, I was actively helping kids with severe developmental disabilities become mainstreamed or become, or return to mainstream classes, and it was a huge success what we did. No one thought that the kids that we were working with could be in a classroom. They couldn't walk, they couldn't talk, they really didn't do much for themselves at all. But it turned out to be a fantastic benefit to both my kids and the other kids in those classrooms. I'm kind of disappointed that we still have to talk about that these days.
It's one of those things, and I'm also an educator, so it's a conversation that still happens today, where there are laws that should provide children with a least restrictive environment, but the way it plays out in certain schools isn't always in service of the child, and that certainly inspired me to write this story.
It's my beautiful wife taught in the Boston Public Schools as a special needs teacher for 34 years. And that was something that she faced.
Right.
I'm sure it's something that you face. And you probably experienced the same thing that my wife experienced. She had a certain description of kids that was supposed to be in her classroom. The kids needed this, that, and the other thing. However, anytime there was a kid that didn't fit into anywhere else, that's where those kids ended up with my wife.
And that, again, it was a huge inspiration for the story, where as an educator, as a parent as well, I've had these kids that fall into the gray area where do they belong? They're not completely mainstream. They're not self-contained, but then they end up in the self-contained and definitely have to deal with the weight and the restriction that often comes with being in those environments, especially when there are kids that are very much aware of the things and the motions that are happening outside of the classroom. And Alex is that kid where he knows where he is and is very much aware of what's happening outside the door, and that definitely leads him to become an advocate for himself.
Good for Alex. I like that.
Yeah, he's a great kid.
Was I'm imagining that Alex, that there are many Alexes in your life that inspired this character.
I have students, my son. There are versions of myself as a child that certainly played into the parts in this story. And I know that's why it took me so long to get this story out of me. All of those pieces had to come together in order for it to find a home in this novel in verse.
Yeah. Can you tell us a little bit about Alex and how he sees himself? And because I'm imagining there might be somebody out there saying, well, you're getting the specialized help you need, Alex. You should be happy. But of course, we know Alex isn't really happy. And can you talk about some of those frustrations he's feeling?
He's aware of his journey. He's in seventh grade, but he remembers and is constantly thinking back on being in the mainstream and then being taken out of it and going into the self-contained. And that happens in third grade. So his brain often travels back to that time in third grade. He's aware that he's taking medication that helps him just keep control. And why has nothing else changed? So there's that part of him that feels that he's still being punished for his lack of self-control, the lack of self-control that he exhibited in third grade. And when he goes to his teachers and asks questions about why they're doing a coffee delivery service, is everyone else in the school doing this? And he doesn't really get an answer. That certainly plays into his level of frustration.
Boy, I imagine that, and I imagine there are probably millions of kids dealing with this where they're asking questions and not getting answers.
Right.
Yeah. What does Alex do to kind of advocate? What kind of things is Alex doing to advocate for himself?
He often turns to his dad. His dad is a huge ally throughout this story. So when he gets the not yet from his teacher, when he feels that his mother protects him too much and also won't open doors for him, he'll go to dad and talk to him and ask him if it's okay, if he'll contact the principal, talk to mom. He'll also write letters to get those thoughts that he carries within, just to get them out. And he'll make connections between his own struggles and the struggles of some of his favorite astronauts. So he definitely uses the world around him, the people around him. And again, space is his thing. He'll use that to make sense of the situations that he has to confront.
It sounds like Alex's dad is one of those dads when the teachers see him coming, they go, oh, no.
He listens to him and he admires his dad. His dad is also an IT guy, a science guy. So they tend to just have conversations about space and satellites. And that's definitely a safe haven for Alex.
Yeah. I love it. Why did you choose to write this novel in verse?
Whenever I thought about Alex, as I was drawing him out as a character and the people in his life, and I'll do that. I'll draft and I'll write poetry. It always starts out as a poem. I definitely, all of his parts, the monologues that I would come up with, they all fell into poetry. So his voice, it just sang to me. And I felt that if I was going to write a story, then it had to have that beat, that rhythm that a novel in verse would house.
Yeah. And so from the start of you creating this story, you always thought of it as a novel in verse?
Always. I write picture books as well. All of my stories usually start out as a poem. Mm-hmm. And this one, I just lean, and I'll definitely pivot into prose if I feel that the story needs that direction. But with Alex, it always led me into poetry.
Now, is this novel in verse, is it a collection of different poems, or is it one poem that starts on page one and we just follow along the same poem to the end?
It's a collection of different poems.
And did you decide, I'm fascinated with this, and novels in verse probably aren't like a brand new thing, but I'm running into authors who are like, novel in verse. I've never heard of that. And so is it a new trend?
It's been around for a while, but I'll often meet other writers at workshops, and I'll take my work and it'll be their first time reading a novel in verse. So for some, I would say it is a bit of a novelty, but some of my favorite novels, young adult and middle grade, are novels in verse, and I can think back as far back as 2018, so they've definitely been around for a while. I
am certainly not an expert when it comes to poetry, but I do know that there are different styles of poems.
Right.
Do you use different styles? And if we're talking about Alex, or if Alex is kind of telling us his part of the story, is it always in that same unique style for Alex?
There's a lot of free verse, and by that, I don't follow some of the traditional standards that you would find in, let's say, a sonnet, where Alex, as someone who is neurodivergent and his thoughts are kind of everywhere, I also felt that a novel in verse and breaking tradition would fit well with his voice. So as you go through the novel, there are moments when there's a lot of white space where I play with the words on the page, where they may go across the page to capture the essence of what Alex is dealing with.
Yeah. A couple of things that you said I wanted to go back to. You mentioned that Alex's dad is a huge advocate, but mom is kind of like, That is one of the things that I found when I was advocating way back in the late 80s was there were some parents that were right on board and let's go, just, full speed ahead.
Right.
Whereas other parents said, no way, no, and I was working in a school that was in a hospital. So it wasn't just this, it's standalone classroom. It was, we had to walk blocks to get to the closest typical school. And I know there were lots of parents who were like, no way, I don't want other kids coming in here and interacting with my kid. Can you talk a little bit about that? Is that still something that educators are running into?
It is. And with Alex's story, what's interesting is that mom shares a lot of Alex's struggles. She also experiences the world in the way that he does, but she's never open about it. They never have a conversation until the very end of the novel. And so she's afraid for him. When Alex tries to take steps in a different direction, she's afraid that he might get hurt, that it might be too much. Whereas dad wants to give him the opportunity because he feels that if they don't allow him to try, then they won't know, and Alex won't know what the right path for him will be. So mom and Alex have an interesting relationship, and the complexities to that relationship were fun to play with as I wrote the story.
You mentioned a couple of times the way Alex sees the world. Can you kind of help us jump into his mind and give us an example of how Alex and his mom might see the world?
And this I hold very close to my heart as someone who also experiences the world differently as a parent and as an educator. Oftentimes when these kids are in self-contained classrooms, even outside of self-contained classrooms, when they have individualized education plans, we tend to just see them on paper. And what we don't often realize is that these individuals feel deeply. And I really wanted to hone in on that with Alex, where he sees what many of the adults don't think he's capable of seeing. He makes connections that many of the adults also don't think he's capable of making. So with that said, I really wanted to spend some time on his heart, on him getting the words out. And even when he can't get the words out, he'll write letters and make his connections to space. And that'll show that he is capable of so much more.
Yeah. It must be frustrating as an educator and as a mom when you see a kid like Alex, who has this incredible interest in a subject at a very early age. And you know that if you can give him those, you feed him that information, let him really go with that he's going to excel. But because of the bureaucracy, it's like, no, this is fifth grade and it's March, so we can't have Alex do a unit on space. We have to have Alex do a unit on this other thing. Right.
And even with, there's a part in the story where they're reading a book, and the book, the other students also in the classroom, his friends realize that the book is also a book that's been shared in third grade classrooms, and they have questions for their teacher as to why they're reading that in their seventh grade classrooms. And that isn't addressed immediately. So I wanted to include that where this does happen, and that's something that I've taken from real life. Mm-hmm. And you'd think that now we're in a time when we have these laws that protect children again and provide them with the least restrictive environment, that something like this wouldn't happen. But it has, and it continues to happen. So I wanted to focus in on those kids that ask the questions, because it's definitely something playing into our world today.
Yeah. We love that books can be mirrors, windows, and sliding glass doors. And I'm imagining somebody who, like Alex, is neurodivergent, that reading this book would be fantastic. To see herself portrayed positively in the pages of books would be wonderful. But I really love the fact that books can also be windows and give other kids a chance to look in and get to know probably someone who is like their classmates on a deeper level. What kind of conversations do you think families can have as they're reading or co-reading The Extraordinary Orbit of Alex Ramirez together?
I love that you've mentioned the point of books also being windows. Because what happens is that children spend so much time in school, and they're often in these learning environments that aren't necessarily self-contained classrooms, but in integrated classrooms where there are a number of children who also learn and experience the world differently. So I'm hoping that a parent to a child who isn't walking through the world in these shoes can have a conversation about things that they may have observed, and now look at this main character and how is he feeling, and look at the way his classmates are responding. So I am hoping for an open conversation between children, parents, and their children. So that's exciting to think about.
Yeah, absolutely. Tell me now that you've created this middle grade novel in verse and it's out there in the world, are you intending to write more middle grade novels in verse?
I as I mentioned earlier, I love poetry. I always start from a poem. I am currently working on another middle grade novel in verse. I also love writing picture books. I'm currently working on one as well. So there's a lot to play with. I love writing stories for young people, so that's something that'll always motivate me and bring me to the page.
Yeah. What do you think sparked that love of writing for kids?
I was very shy as a child, and I often felt that I couldn't talk about the things, like Alex, couldn't talk about the things that I observed, the connections that I made both at home and at school. And there's a lot that I carried within. And my way of dealing was that I'd write letters to the universe, and then I'd write them out and I'd hide them. Like I'd hide them under my toys and drawers. Because I felt that if I didn't hide them, then the universe wouldn't respond. And it was my way of asking for help, of getting things out. And that's something that I continued to do even as a young adult and an adult. Whenever I'm sitting with something, I'll often go through the process of just letting it breathe on the page. And that is something that definitely led me into writing.
Yeah. I don't necessarily write letters to universe, but in my journal, if I'm angry, I will give it to the person I'm angry about on the page. And usually by the time I'm finished, I'm not angry anymore and I don't have to say it to anybody.
It's a great coping mechanism. I love it. I one of the things that I did as a parent when my kids, they're teenagers now, but when they were younger, I'd encourage them to get their feelings out in their journals, and they would illustrate them. And now as I look through them now, it's interesting to see the words, and also like they were big fans of graphic novels back then, and many of their entries were also, they look like pages out of a graphic novel, and that was fun to see.
Awesome. You know, we've talked a lot here in the podcast about a lot of reluctant readers, you know, being attracted to graphic novels, and that makes perfect sense to me. I think, and I don't know if there's any evidence to back it up, I think that middle grade novels in verse may also be a great way to interest reluctant readers, because I know for me, especially when I was younger, one of the things I would do is I would open up a book, and if I noticed that each chapter of a book was like 30 pages long, I'd shut it, you know. But if I picked up a book and it was the same number of pages, but the chapters were like 3 or 4 or 5 pages long, I'd be right into that. And since this is a collection of poems,
right.
I'm thinking, yeah.
There's a lot of white space. There are poems that are only a few lines long, and I wanted to encourage kids who would typically shy away from reading to give this story an opportunity. Again, as a parent, I with my son, he's coming to mind. He was a huge fan of picking up a book and, the page looks too busy. I don't think I can do this, which also then led him to like become a big fan of audiobooks. I also love those, but a novel in verse, you'll find that there is a lot of white space. There is breathing room for a reluctant reader to pace him or herself throughout the story.
Yeah. Speaking of audiobooks, I'm also a fan. I'm tackling a 25-hour audiobook right now. I hope
That's amazing.
Are there any talks about making The Extraordinary Orbit of Alex Ramirez into an audiobook?
The audiobook will be released on the same day that the book will be released. So on June 3rd, both versions will be available for those interested.
Awesome. And how is that? Have you had a chance to listen to the audiobook yet?
I listened to samples of narrators, and I was able to choose one. And I'm really excited about the narrator and the life that he'll breathe into Alex. So I'm definitely looking forward to June 3rd and getting a listen.
Yeah. And do you have any aspirations of narrating your own audiobook in the future?
I'd love to. I think for me, I'd have to, since my main character, he's a boy, I wanted the narrator to sync up with that. At some point, I tend to write boys. That's the first, I fall into that for picture books in middle grade, but I do see myself writing a female main character, and perhaps at that point, I would consider narration.
Hey, Jasmine, where can we go to find out more about The Extraordinary Orbit of Alex Ramirez and find out more about you
can certainly visit my website at www.jasminepaulino.com, and I'm also on Instagram on Jasmine Notes, jasmine.notes, so that you can follow my journey with this debut.
We've had a great time speaking to the author of The Extraordinary Orbit of Alex Ramirez. It's a new middle grade novel in verse from our guest, Jasminne Paulino. Jasminne, thanks so much for being on Reading with Your Kids.
Thank you for having me. It was so much fun to get to talk about Alex with you.
Are you looking for a creative way to bond with your kids? Let me tell you all about Drawing with Your Kids, the ultimate destination for artistic adventures. Join us as we dive into the wonderful world of children's books with renowned illustrators guiding you step by step. From beloved characters to whimsical scenes, unleash your imagination and create cherished memories together. Whether you're a seasoned artist or just picking up a pencil, there's something for everyone at Drawing with Your Kids. Please visit our website, readingwithyourkids.com, and click on the Drawing with Your Kids link at the top of the page and let the creativity flow. Drawing with Your Kids, where every stroke brings stories to life.
Do you want to save money on your next flight? Then pick up the phone and call. That's right, call. Because the best prices are not online. They're with SmartFares. See, SmartFares has special deals with the airlines. When they have unsold seats, they use SmartFares to fill them. So you get airline tickets at crazy low prices. They have access to great prices and discounts at over 500 different airlines. Plus 300,000 hotels and rental car companies. Their prices are too low to publish online. With the extra money you'll save, you can book another trip or treat yourself to dinner or shopping. So stop searching all of those travel sites to find the lowest price on your next flight. Let one of our SmartFares expert travel agents find the best price for you. Call SmartFares today and get ready to see the world with a fat wallet.
855-325-1823. 855-325-1823. That's 855-325-1823.
My friends, if you have ever thought about owning a business that's fun, rewarding, and makes a valuable contribution to kids' education, well, Brooklyn Robot Foundry is calling your name. I recently met Jenny Young. She's the founder of Brooklyn Robot Foundry. And let me tell you, she is incredible. Her passion for getting kids excited about STEAM, that's STEM plus art, it's contagious. I'm telling you. This isn't your average kids program. Brooklyn Robot Foundry is all about hands-on, screen-free STEAM fun. These kids get to build a different robot each class and take it home with them afterwards. Kids love it. Parents are raving about it. And now you can own a franchise and bring this incredible experience to families in your community. Now, this isn't your typical franchise. Brooklyn Robot Foundry is a mobile, flexible business with a deep curriculum that's making a real impact in schools and communities around the country. Franchise owners get a proven curriculum, full training, and support from a passionate team. So what are you waiting for? Please visit bit.ly/robotjed. That's bit.ly/robotjed. And let them know you heard about it on Reading with Your Kids. Join us right now from the beautiful state of New Mexico. Our guest is here today to celebrate her wonderful picture book. It's called Words. Please welcome to the show, Katherine Davis Gibbon. Hey, Katherine, how are you?
I am great. How are you?
Wonderful. Really excited to have you here. Words, what an interesting title for a picture book.
I'm sure it resonates with you given the nature of this podcast that you've created.
So tell us a little bit about the book, please.
So Words is about finding yourself in the world of language. So the story follows a diverse group of kids. They discover a magical park where words quite literally come to life. So the words that people are using, speaking, thinking, what they're seeing, become fully illustrated interactive characters in the book. So, they're all different, just like people. Words have their own personalities. Some are warmer, more relatable, more instantly friendly, and others, have some sharp edges, or they're, a little off-putting or unique in different ways. But the more these kids kind of spend time with words and give them their time and attention, play, share adventures, try new things together, the more they begin to connect with language. So, although not every word makes the best first impression, what they learn is that words like people can become their friends. Any word, like any person, can become a really good friend.
Interesting. Give us an example of that. When you say a word comes to life, can you kind of describe for us, just pick one word and let us know how that word comes to life in your book?
So what happens is I worked very closely with this wonderful illustrator, Ann Berry, to render words as characters. So the letters are spelled out usually in sort of a vertical way, with the first letter being rendered as a head in some way. And so they're literally embodied. And with each word, it's not every word of the whole story is a character. That would be too crazy to read. But we've picked out keywords for each illustration, for each kind of setting, which, some are just scenes of like taking in like this park and all these different people and how unique everyone is. And other times it's a very specific word like push and pull, having an argument, or here and there, tossing a ball back and forth. And so we kind of rendered them to maximize their personality, and kind of the fun is sort of decoding the word. So as you're reading it, you're kind of like, I know that's a word, if you're a kid, because I see that it's colorful and it's, it sort of looks like a character, but different than a child character. But what word is it? And so it sort of makes it fun. The phonetic decoding piece becomes fun. And at the same time, it sort of brings the meaning of that word to life. Like it just gives it a whole new layer of, visual impact and context. So that kids are really kind of getting into the feeling of what words mean.
What a fascinating concept. What inspired this?
Great question. So, I've always had an affinity for words. Obviously, I'm a writer, so words are kind of my outlet and also my inlet, if you like. And for me, I really feel like words they're almost like people to me. They're like a circle of friends who know me even better than I know myself. So depending on what's going on, during a tough time, I feel like words rally around me and give me support. At the same time, words also push me in a lot of ways. They challenge me. They confront me. They push me to be a better person. They push me to think things through, keep asking questions, stay curious, not to accept things at face value, but to really be reflective and playfully investigative about experience and life. And for me, all my life, this has been just an incredible resource. So I wanted to share it with kids, especially kids of this age group. The book is targeted for kids 4 to 8, basically. Pre-readers, I think, are having fun with it too, but mostly like developing readers. Because, these are people who are, they're sort of doing these two things at once. They're embarking on this journey with literacy, and in terms of their development, they are experimenting with finding their voice. So what better way to kind of marry those two things together? I really wanted them to see words can be my friends. Words can be my confidants. I can share with them. They can be my teammates who have my back. They can be my teachers too, because that's how it is for me as a writer. Words are very much my greatest teachers.
One of the things that really caught my attention as you're describing your inspiration for the book is you mentioned that the book are for 4 to 8-year-olds, and you said these people.
Yes.
As opposed to what I would probably say most people would say is and kids this age, or these kids, and so you really see young people first as people.
Absolutely. And this is something that I feel really strongly about, Jed, in my writing and in the books that I want to be sharing with my kids too, is I really feel like we need to speak to the best that kids have to offer, really, like to really, how can we expect them to do all these difficult things, to question, to self-reflect, to kind of, rise to the occasion, whatever the occasion is, unless we're really speaking to them in the voice of like, you can, of course you can, and it's the same for adults. I mean, we're all on a journey, right? Learning never ends. My relationship with words and communication, I'm not done. I don't have this down. I learn every day, and I think that's delightful. So I want to share that message with kids.
Well, I love that. I think being a lifelong learner is so very, very important, just for our own mental health.
Absolutely. And I think that's a huge concern right now that a lot of parents have, a lot of people have, is about what's going on with kids and mental health, certainly, in the wake of the pandemic, and a lot of these, children who are between 4 and 8, like my daughter is 8 right now. She was 3 when the pandemic hit. So, at the time I was like, these are going to be her earliest memories of, like she's not going to remember all the stuff we did when she was, a baby and 1 and 2. She's going to remember the masks and the distancing and all that kind of stuff. So I think it's really key, that we kind of go the extra mile, with, kids of this age group, Generation Alpha, basically. The pandemic was, such a formative experience for them. And, everyone, I think, is in agreement that kids were affected by it, social skills, social development, which keys right into social emotional learning. So it keys right back into the self, and mental health. All those things took a hit during the pandemic. Interestingly, I think, this is fascinating. As much as it's easy to point to the pandemic, child psychologists, pediatricians were really sounding the alarm bells about these issues a full decade before COVID arrived. they were already saying, social media. And I think more than just social media, I think technology in general, which can be a wonderful tool. And I'm not an anti-technology parent. I'm an everything in moderation parent. But with that said, kids are growing up in a very different way now. Even just the littlest things like self-checkout. When I was a kid, I didn't have that. I went into a store and talked to someone, in order to make a purchase, or to do anything. We didn't have cell phones. We didn't really have the internet, personal computers, not really. So, this is something that I think is top of the mind for many parents for very good reason. And it's like, well, what do we do about that? We've got to strengthen this connection that kids have with themselves. And, so that their voice isn't just something that gets projected out at others, in a sort of opinionated, one-sided, closed way, but it's really a process. It's a learning process. It's like, well, what is my opinion and why do I have this opinion? And, really asking questions and pursuing, everything that interests them and everything that troubles them inside as well.
Well, I think, and we've talked about it a lot here on the podcast, that idea of helping kids think about what they think and willing to kind of own it and share it. It starts when we're reading a book like Words Together and ask them, what do you think about what just happened? How would you have done that differently? What do you think about when that character did this or that? We are the most important person in our kids' lives, and they want nothing more than our attention. And when we take the time to read with them and ask them and show interest and curiosity in how they're thinking, when we ask them, what do you think about this? And they tell us, and we realize, well, I don't think like that, but I asked them their opinion, so their opinion it's their opinion. It's right. I can't tell them that they're wrong. I can tell them I disagree with them.
Exactly. And we really, something that runs through the whole book is this idea that, words, like people, they have their superpowers. Each word has its own personality, its own power to express something very unique. So it has its strengths, and it also has its kind of tender spots and its vulnerabilities and its quirks. So there are layers. There are layers to people, layers to language, layers to dynamics with people, and layers to your own opinion. You could think you know what your opinion is about something, but then if you listen to someone else, their input may tweak your opinion a little bit or completely change it, and that's something, another thing just about the social media, tying back into that piece, is just that is so one-sided, and communication is a two-sided event, phenomena. There's the expression piece, and there's the receptivity and the true listening where you let words in. And so that was something we really tried to do in this book is, we didn't really create like good words and bad words, which I think would be kind of the typical way that a book of this nature would be rendered. We really tried to show words as unique personalities that have both good and bad potential in them, depending on how you choose to use them.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I think that's a very incredibly important concept to teach kids, is that, things, inanimate things, aren't good or bad. They're things. How we use them, and it's our behavior. You can build something beautiful with a hammer, or you can build somebody's self-confidence with words, but you can also use those same exact words in a way to tear somebody apart.
Exactly. One of my favorite spots in the book, it's kind of the peak of the book, in terms of the narrative arc, is where it says, isn't it funny that the same word that hurt can also heal? And the way to feel better is to say its name, to let it explain. And I think that's just a really powerful message right now. Another concern top of the mind for parents is bullying. Obviously, it's like an epidemic, and it's real and it's happening. But how do we sort of de-escalate, right? Like you could hear something that happened to your kid and it could just make your blood boil, right? If your kid was victimized or singled out or someone was unkind. I mean, I'm kind of a mama bear, so I get riled up over even the little things. But it's like, what good does it do for me to get angry and attack back? The only way to de-escalate and to pull back and to try and get out of this difficult position that our culture is in right now with bullying is through words, through connection, through listening, just taking words more seriously and really more to heart. And I think people are afraid to do that. I think kids are a little afraid, understandably, to do that because of how frequently words are being weaponized by kids and adults. But this is really the only way out. You either stay here, which we don't want to do, escalate further, which we don't want to do, or de-escalate by using language in a wiser, more heartfelt way.
I couldn't agree with you more. It's, bullying is a topic in my educational magic shows. It was the topic I was addressing most often for about 25 of the 35 years that I traveled around the country performing for kids. And it's really interesting that the most effective program, anti-bullying program that I ran into wasn't the big banners across, say no to bullying or having kids sign a pledge or whatnot. It was,
right.
It was a simple program called, Our Time. And it was the letter R, time, came from England. And it was absolutely brilliant. What happens in your class once a week, kids sit down for a little 10-minute exercise where they're paired up randomly. And you and I, Catherine, and I would first, and it was a time for us to have a conversation using exaggerated politeness. So I would say, Catherine, thank you so very much for being my partner today. And you would respond, well, it's a pleasure, Jedley. Great to see you. Thank you for speaking to me. And we'd have a conversation that would, based on the topic that a teacher would begin with, and then everybody would review it at the end. I know it works because when I learned about it, I took it into my kids' school and I presented it and did it for a couple of weeks with a number of fourth, third, and second grade classes. And I was getting calls from the parents at all times of the night. What are you doing with my kids? I can't, they're here and they're helping and they're being polite and they're offering to help clean the dishes, and you stole my child. You replaced it with this robot or something. I don't understand it. And it was just what, and it just goes to show you how powerful, as you were saying, how powerful words can be.
Well, what you're describing, Jed, is, I think, the miracle of modeling. This is what I think what we need to do is sort of two-pronged. It's like, on the one hand, it's the modeling. It's like, do kids want to be mean or, want to be bullies? I don't think so. I think the vast majority of kids, save whatever sliver of the percentage of the population is, has serious mental health issues. I mean, the vast majority of kids, people in general, they want to feel safe. They want to be happy. They want to succeed, and they want to feel proud of their successes. Like, that's what everyone kind of wants, I think. That's a good day, right? So, how do we do this? We have to model for them as adults, pathways of behavior and language that achieve those goals without belittling someone else. Like, give them another option. Don't tell them, stop saying this and stop saying that. Show them what to do, not what not to do. Give them a pathway, give them a map. And then the other piece is just that explicit teaching piece of, equipping them with a really rich vocabulary, because the more words you know, the more choices you have. No matter what situation you're in, no matter what pressure you're facing, peer pressure, in a really scary moment with a bully, whatever. If you know a lot of words, you have a lot of options. You have a lot of freedom. You have the agility to, possibly respond in just the way that feels really good in the moment, not in a zinger kind of feeling good in the moment, but feels really wholesome and right in the moment, and something where you can look back on it later and feel proud of yourself and say, like, wow, I really handled that situation well. And the more kids string together those moments of, I handled this situation well, and I handled that situation well, and that other situation, that's how they build their identity as, they can think of themselves as a good communicator who is really facile with language.
Have you always been fascinated with words, their meanings, and their use?
I have been. And I think as a kid, I was really shy. And I think it was almost like I felt this incredible sense of the power of them. And it was so kind of awe-inspiring, and just so potent. And I cared so much about kind of using them well that I was very circumspect about, using them. I really took my time. And I like to write and I like to read. So, in that way, words were my friends. And I had friends. I have lots of friends, but I was just careful with words. I was always careful with words. And, maybe a little too careful at first. And I've had to do things to kind of loosen myself up and feel safe, using them. And that's probably what, a lot of what inspired the book too, is just wanting to share that with kids so they can have that same sense of awe, and they can have that sense of the power and the respect for the power, but they can also not be afraid to use them, not feel worried, oh, I'm going to say the wrong thing, but just understand this is a lifelong journey. You are going to say the wrong thing, because we all do, right? And that's when you turn back to your good friend's words, because words are amazing at apologizing too, and reframing things and teaching you.
Well, we should use our words to tell everybody where they can go to find out more about and find out more about you.
Yes, please. So my website is Riverlet Press, Riverlet, L-E-T, press.com. And if you go there, you can read about both of my books, follow links to reviews, follow links to all sorts of retailers, the Barnes & Noble and the Indies. And I also have a page just for parents. It's called Resources. There's a Resources tab on the menu where I list some kind of practical suggestions for, teaching kids just all the layers of sensitive, effective communication, and also just ideas of ways to kind of integrate this reverence for words in classroom and in the home.
We've had a great time speaking to the author of Words. Our guest has been Katherine Davis Gibbon. Katherine, thanks so much for being on Reading with Your Kids.
It was truly a pleasure. Thank you so much.
We hope you've enjoyed this episode of Reading with Your Kids, and we hope you'll join us for the next exciting episode of the show. In the meantime, we'd love for you to connect with us on social media, facebook.com/readingwithyourkids, at Reading With Your Kids on Instagram, at Deadly Magic on Twitter, our YouTube channel, youtube.com/readingwithyourkids, and our website is readingwithyourkids.com. Hey, we'd also love it if you could subscribe to the show wherever you find your favorite shows. You can find Reading with Your Kids. And while you're subscribing, we really would appreciate it if you would consider leaving us a 5-star review. It really helps other folks find the podcast and therefore helping other families grow closer through reading. I want to thank the folks who made today's show so wonderful, starting with our guest, Jasminne Paulino. Please be sure to check out The Extraordinary Orbit of Alex Ramirez, great middle grade novel. Also want to thank Katherine Davis Gibbon. Please be sure to check out her picture book. It's called Word. I want to thank my incredible team, Fatima Khan, Chris Doherty, Rory Grady, Stella Sheree. I want to thank my beautiful wife for all the support she gives me. Most of all, we all want to thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. And as always, thank you so very much for taking the time to make the world a better place. And you do that every time you read with your kids. I'll be looking for you in the next episode of Reading with Your Kids.